We are going to start today's webinar. A pleasant good morning to all the dignitaries present who have connected to us on the e-platform, guests, teaching staff, non-teaching faculty, dear students, and guests from outside Prem Institute of Medical Sciences. I welcome you all to the webinar on CPR diligence, which is going to be held today at Prem Institute of Medical Sciences, Panipat. It's my proud privilege and pleasure to present the welcome address to our speaker of the day, Dr. Poonam Joshi, who is working as Associate Professor at College of Nursing, All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi. We welcome you, ma'am. On behalf of the management, students and faculty, we are really thankful to you for sparing your valuable time, and you will be taking a great session, that I know because I had been your student, and it's really a privilege that you have joined us today. I would also like to welcome our chairman, Dr. Pankaj Mutneja sir, who is a figure in the institute who motivates us throughout the day and night, and who is really a mentor for all of us. Giving brief introduction about sir, Dr. Pankaj Mutneja has done his MBBS in 1985 from PGIMS Rohtak. He completed his masters in general surgery from PGIMS Rohtak and completed his senior residency in the same training institute. He is presently director of LSDM and Dr. Prem Hospital Private Limited, and also chairman of Prem Institute of Medical Sciences. He is an eminent surgeon and a doctor of repute. He has received various prestigious awards from Haryana government for his contribution to the medical profession. He has been the chairman of Indian Association of Pediatrics, Haryana chapter. He is presently a member of National Medical Commission, which is the highest regulatory body for the medical education in India. Because of his busy schedule, he is not able to join us today, but he has sent his blessings and best wishes to all the speakers, to all the guests and the participants who have joined for the webinar. Next, I would like to welcome our CEO, Sir Brigadier J.R. Sethi, who is working as Chief Executive Officer cum Director at Prem Institute of Medical Sciences. He is an engineer graduate and also has done his MA in psychology. He has also done post-graduation in personnel management and post-graduation in industrial and financial management from Delhi University. He has served army for more than 32 years of his service, and he served in the Indian Army in the Corps of Signals, which provides communication to the Indian Army as well as the Indian Air Force. He has been the chairman of Service Selection Board Armed Forces, where officers for Army, Navy, and Air Force are selected. He provides training to children for NDA and IMA. And I would request the IT person, Mr. Sun, to connect to Mr. Brigadier J.R. Sethi. We welcome you, sir. Over to Mr. Sun for connecting to Mr. J.R. Sethi, sir.
I welcome the delegates, especially Dr. Poonam Joshi, who has found time to educate our children and the staff on CPR diligence. This institute was founded by a renowned surgeon, Dr. Prem Kumar. He had done his specialization from All India Medical Institute of Sciences, and his son, Dr. Pankaj Mutreja, is now the chairman of the institute. Their only aim has been in Haryana, his new occupation and practical experience also the cancer hospital, which has been started recently by his grandson. All that we want is our children should be the best academically and understand practically how to handle a serious patient and earn the blessings of not only the patient, also the relatives of the patient. Health workers are the most important part of the society, and their hard work, their diligence, their service is the most important service to the society to save the precious lives of those who happen to come to the hospitals. I wish our principal a very bright future so that she keeps on planning such conferences, webinars for the children and the staff so that they update their knowledge on the health problems of the patients. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your valuable words and blessings. As sir said, it all started with a dignified, revered man, Dr. Prem Kumar, who dreamed big and founded this Prem Institute of Medical Sciences. And his dream is a big realization today. We have all the courses in our institute, starting from A&M until NPCC. We have all the courses, A&M, GNM, BSc Nursing, Post-Basic BSc Nursing, MSc in all specialities, and nurse practitioner in critical care. And this is the only institute in Haryana which is attached to which is having a NABH accredited parent hospital, and our students, they are getting specialized and super specialized training at our parent hospital apart from the other hospitals in the city and state of Haryana. So not taking much of the time, now I would be introducing our honorable speaker of the day, Dr. Poonam Joshi, ma'am, who is working as associate professor at All India Institute of Medical Sciences, New Delhi. She is having a huge experience in the field of pediatrics, research, and clinical experience. She is one of the most favorite teacher in the College of Nursing at AIIMS. She is having 72 publications to her credit. She is master trainer of essential newborn care, also for integrated management of neonatal and childhood illnesses. She is master trainer for global funds for AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria under GFATM project by
मैम आपका माइक म्यूट हो गया है।
sorry. Hello, am I audible now?
Yes, ma'am.
Continuing with Dr. Poonam Joshi ma'am's brief introduction, she has written many books and monograms in the field of pediatrics, nursing education, and special on diabetes mellitus and its management. She has won many prestigious awards like first prize in exhibition of Student Nurse Association at national level in 1989. She has also received first prize in pediatric health nursing and gynecology and obstetrical nursing in 1989. She bagged N.G. Gadekar Award for Best Staff Nurse in 1990 to 91 at All India Institute of Medical Sciences. She got an award of Best Infection Control Nurse from 97 to 98 for 2 consecutive years. She has also received AIIMS Sonia Nurse Research Award in 2012. She has also received fellowship in 2018 from All India Institute of Medical Sciences in the field of research methodology and evidence-based medicine. She has also got emergency medicine fellowship in 2019. So the list is huge. She has having 72 publications to her credit, and above her achievements, she is a very good ideal nursing personnel who mentors and motivates a number of thousands of nursing people and other people around her. She is a continuous source of motivation for all of us. We welcome you, ma'am, to today's webinar. Over to Poonam Joshi, ma'am.
Thank you, Professor Inderpreet, for the kind words and for this opportunity. I would also like to extend my thanks, my gratitude to the members of the organizing committee for giving me again this opportunity and trusting me on delivering this topic. So with this brief gratitude, I would like to start with my presentation. I would like to share my screen. Do I have the permission to do that?
Yes, ma'am. We have made you host now, so you have full
Okay.
rights to share your screen and you can continue your webinar presentation, ma'am.
Okay, thank you. So today we shall be learning about CPR diligence during COVID-19. If you look at the present situation which is going on in India, it's very, very challenging for all the healthcare professionals. If you look at today's data in the newspaper, you will find there are already 2.37 crores of people affected with COVID-19, And today 3.6 lakh people have presented with the complaints of symptoms which are peculiar to COVID-19, and more than 4,000 deaths have taken place. So the situation is very, very challenging for all of us. And in a very short period of time, you can see the entire world has got affected with COVID-19. Fortunately, you will find majority of patients, majority of individuals who develop COVID-19, they recover on their own. 85% of the patients, they require very symptomatic treatment. They are having mild type of symptoms, or sometimes they are asymptomatic. So they recover on their own with the home isolation facilities, which the government of India has provided. It's only about 15% whom I'm talking about. These 15% of the patients, they are likely to have moderate to severe COVID-19 infection. Out of these 15%, you will find 5%, they tend to become very, very sick, critical, and they may require admission in the ICU. So there comes the role of healthcare professionals, and there comes the need for learning cardiopulmonary resuscitation while providing it to a COVID-19 patient. We have to have special guidelines available, and we should be familiar with those guidelines. So this is the objective with which today's webinar has been arranged. So, uh, so I have already introduced, it's a recent outbreak of novel coronavirus disease is caused by, we all know that it is caused by severe acute respiratory syndrome coronavirus 2, and it remains very challenging. It's challenging because we have to make sure that it is not transmitted, minimizing the risk of transmission. And for that, we need to have the preventive strategies. And equally challenging is the management of those patients who are critically ill. So now the question arises, who is at risk? Every individual is at risk. Earlier, people thought those who have already got one-time infection, they thought now they are immune, they have antibodies developed in their body. And those who are vaccinated, they were also feeling very happy that now the virus cannot do any harm to them. But we have to understand, we have to see that there have been the cases of repeated infections. Even post vaccination, we have lost number of healthcare professionals, so we have to be very careful. So the purpose of giving this information to you all is not to make you scared, but to sensitize you to the issue so that you observe adequate precautions at the area of your work. There are people who are at more risk. These group of people are the older persons who are having comorbidities like diabetes mellitus, uncontrolled hypertension, or any other cardiovascular disease, hepatic impairment, renal disorder, respiratory pathologies. Especially those who are immunocompromised, they are at risk. That is why you will find a lot of emphasis has been put on building up your immunity. So every other day you get in the newspaper, in the social media, through WhatsApp, you get the messages regarding the building up of your own immunity. So this makes a lot of difference. Those who are immunologically strong, they are less likely to be affected with the severe kind of infection. Now we have updated CPR guidelines. Here I would like to make a mention about three important agencies. These are the national and international agencies. AHA is American Heart Association, ERC is European Resuscitation Council, and IRC is the Indian Resuscitation Councils. So these are the nodal agencies which have issued the CPR guidelines. And these are highly focused for the management of cardiac arrest in patients with COVID-19. You will find a lot of recommendations are there for the healthcare professionals specific to COVID-19 because of number of reasons. Differing etiology of cardiac arrest. If you recall, when you were taught earlier about cardiopulmonary resuscitation, you were told that in adults it is mainly cardiac in origin. But now we know the etiology, the symptomatology of COVID-19. We know that most of the patients, they present with hypoxia. So it is respiratory failure, which is going to be the prime etiology for cardiac arrest development. So now there has been a shift. So in non-COVID patients, you will find cardiac causes are there, while in COVID patients, you will find it is predominantly the respiratory causes. Next is the virulence of the virus. We know the virus has developed variants. We have observed number of mutations reported by Government of India. So with the mutation, this virus has become more virulent and more infectious. So if you compare with the last year wave, you will find this time more and more people are affected. It is the entire family, as the infection has been declared as airborne infection. Earlier, till last year, it was said that COVID-19 is a droplet infection, but now it's been a universal fact that COVID-19 is a airborne infection. So one has to be extra cautious. Risk of transmission to the rescuer. So mainly, hello.
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
I would request you to please share your screen. Your PPT is not visible.
Oh, I'm sorry. Just a minute. Are the PPTs visible now? Hello.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so I'll just quickly run the previous slides. I have not moved many slides. So we were talking about CPR diligence during COVID-19. I have already given you a brief introduction and I have told you about the statistics. Today's statistics, there were around 3.6 lakhs patients who reported with the fresh symptoms. However, the recovery rate is also very good in India. But at the same time, if you look at the data, around 4,000 deaths, more than 4,000 deaths were reported in India today. So I told you that COVID-19 infection can be seen in any individual. No individual is exception. So everyone is susceptible to get the infection. The older people are more at risk because of the comorbidities like diabetes mellitus, cardiac diseases, the uncontrolled hypertension, hepatic impairment, renal disorders, respiratory pathologies. We have also learned that immunity plays very important role. So those who have good immune disease, while those with the immunocompromised status and those with these kind of comorbid status, which I just now explained, they are more vulnerable and they can land up with severe kind of infection requiring hospitalization and also requiring sometimes admission in the ICU. So thereafter I told you about the national and international agencies which are responsible for making the CPR guidelines. Last year in October 2020, as been done, you will, I'm sure you must have reviewed the new guidelines. They are non-COVID guidelines. The CPR guidelines related to COVID-19 were released somewhere in the month of May last year. So these are the nodal agencies. And then I mentioned about COVID-19 has a lot of concerns. People are having concerns about the infection because of number of reasons. Number one is the differing etiology of cardiac arrest. I told you it is mainly going to present in the form of Hello. Hello.
Hello, ma'am.
There was problem in the network.
Yes, ma'am. It is at your side.
Yes, I know. Host has disabled me for screen sharing. Please allow me to share my screen.
Yes, ma'am.
Do I need to share my PPTs again? Hello.
Ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Are the PPTs visible?
No, ma'am. No. Your screen is not visible, ma'am.
Actually, I'm not allowed to share my screen. It's showing disabled participant screen sharing.
Actually, initially,
I leave and rejoin, shall I?
no, ma'am, please just wait for 1 minute. We are doing that. So, ma'am, I think now you can share.
Are they visible?
Ma'am, it's
PPTs
visible.
are visible?
Yes, ma'am, it's
Okay,
visible
okay.
now.
I'll go to slideshow mode. So the risk of transmission to the rescuer is very high, and there is need to avoid or minimize aerosolization from the patient due to various interventions. These patients may require interventions like they may require endotracheal suctioning, they may require bag and mask ventilation. Sometimes we are there to provide other care. So during this period, the risk of transmission of infection to the rescuer is very high. This is the algorithm which I'll be talking about. It's a systematic approach. It's been scientifically proven. I'm going to discuss these algorithms in detail in the subsequent slides. So I'm just familiarizing you with the algorithm. So first thing is the scene safety. Scene safety is very much essential when we are taking care of patients with COVID-19. So the scene safety includes donning PPE. Donning PPE, this refers to wearing level 3 PPE. You can see here the healthcare professionals, they are donned in overall cover. They have a face shield, they have N95 mask, they are wearing double pair of gloves, and bottom down you can, which is not visible to you, they do wear shoe covers. So this is how the healthcare professionals, they are expected to be protecting themselves. And this PPE should be available at the entrance of the unit. And the doffing facility should be at the exit point. Thereafter, following doffing, they are expected to be taking a shower before going home. So I'm just skipping these slides and I'm going to the detailed one, which is there later on. So here starts checking the response. So first and the foremost thing I told you, we are going to ensure the scene safety, and then comes checking the response. So we are going to elicit the response from the patient by tapping on his shoulder. You have seen this and you must have done it prior to COVID, in maybe in the demonstration room or in the clinical setting. But the difference here you can see is the healthcare personnel is trying to maintain the maximum possible distance, and the maximum possible distance is of an arm length. Earlier we used to go very close to the head and side of the patient and evoke the response. But now when you have a COVID patient, either a confirmed or a suspected patient, you have to elicit the response by keeping a distance between you and the patient. And here in the picture, you can see the patient has a surgical mask being placed on his face. So if patient responds, it means he is not having a cardiac arrest, he is not in a state of cardiac arrest, and you can monitor him continuously. If patient does not respond, that time you can consider him in a state of cardiac arrest. After checking the response, when you have confirmed that patient is not responding, when we are checking the response, we tap on the shoulder and we ask, are you okay? If he is not responding, assume him to be in a state of cardiac arrest. And the next step is we are going to activate the COVID code blue. It's a kind of an alarm which you are raising, and you are calling the COVID designated team and asking them to bring crash cart with defibrillator and the airway management equipment. It's unlike previously, we were involving around 6 to 7 healthcare personnel in the resuscitation. But during COVID time, this number is restricted to just 3 persons. So next you can see the person has already activated the COVID code blue, and thereafter he is making an attempt to check the pulse and his breath. So how do we check the pulse? You can see here the individual is checking the carotid pulse on the same side where he is standing. The time taken for checking the carotid pulsation is not more than 10 seconds. So remember, this 10 seconds is an important figure which I'll be repeatedly telling to you. And this figure you have to remember. Every activity is to be finished within 10 seconds. So 10 seconds is a reasonable time where we can afford to interrupt our resuscitation activities. So one should not take more than 10 seconds time to check the pulse. And the purpose of checking the pulse is to know whether it is present or not. While you are checking the pulse, you have to look at the chest wall for chest rise. That is mainly for breathing. Do not listen, do not feel for the breath. So this is an important guideline which has been added in COVID guidelines, that we are not going to listen or we are not going to feel for breathing. Next comes the chest compression. So you find this individual is still alone. So far what he has done, he has checked the response of an individual. He has activated COVID code blue. Thereafter, he assessed pulse of the patient and he checked breathing, whether patient is breathing or not. Thereafter, he has started with chest compression. So chest compression is only started when you are not seeing him breathing and you are not finding his pulse. So chest compression, it enables the circulation of blood in a patient during his cardiac arrest, and this is mainly done to promote circulation. This is mainly done to sustain the life. Now, during chest compressions, you have to remember few important points. Number one, the elbow of the patient, of the rescuer, the one who is providing chest compression, should be locked. The arms are to be straight. So no bending is allowed at the elbow, and the arms are kept straight. The shoulders are directly placed over the patient's chest, and it is the pressure exerted from the shoulder girdles, not from the elbow, but the pressure is exerted from the shoulder girdles. And do not allow fingers to touch the chest wall of the patient. As you can see in this picture, the fingers of the healthcare personnel, they are off the chest wall. So what will happen if my fingers are touching the patient's chest wall? The pressure is going to get transmitted to the entire chest wall. As a result, this is going to be a non-effective or ineffective chest compression. So just remember, keep in mind, your fingers should be off the chest wall. Now, coming to the high quality CPR, you will be learning repeatedly about high quality CPR, and we emphasize on giving high quality CPR to our patients. So before this, I would like to just inform you how do we select the site for CPR. You run your fingers like this, and move in an upward direction. Feel the xiphoid process, and two fingers above the xiphoid process, you are going to place heel of your one hand over which your other hand is going to be placed. Interlock your fingers, keep your fingers off the chest wall. So this is how we select the site for chest compression. And now for giving chest compression, the compressions are to be given at a rate of 120 per minute at a depth of 5 to 6 centimeters. So 5 to 6 centimeters depth, you have to provide compression. Minimize interruptions. Minimize interruption means don't take more than 10 seconds. It is like switching over. Suppose you are switching over. It's a role reversal done between the compressor and between the other person. So in that situation, that interchange of role should not take more than 10 seconds time. That is referring to minimizing interruptions. And allow chest wall to completely recoil. So you do not have to keep pressing the chest wall, just press and release, press and release. This is how you can provide chest recoiling and avoid hyperventilation. You can see the person standing at the head end of the side is providing bag and mask ventilation, avoid hyperventilation. Hyperventilation is going to interfere with the circulation of blood supply. Now, next important feature which we have in COVID-19 guidelines, that is the use of mechanical chest compressor. Again, to minimize the contact between the rescuer and the patient. So these are the mechanical chest compressors. We have videos available on YouTube. Number of videos are there. You can just run those videos and help in understanding. These will help you in understanding how the mechanical chest compressor works. So it is going to provide at a constant rate chest compression to the individual. Chest compressors if they are available. Now next is the bag and mask ventilation. Bag and mask ventilation is provided by two people. Here you can see one person is trying to create a seal, a proper seal, so that the aerosol generation is minimized. So you can see here with the help of both the hands, the person standing at the head end of the patient is going to create a seal using the mask over the patient's face. And the other person, this person is actually the compressor. As he finishes 30 compressions, thereafter he steps down, he comes to the head and side and delivers 2 breaths to the patient. So this is another new addition in COVID guidelines. So this technique is known as giving bag and mask ventilation using 2 hands, where an assistant can squeeze the bag. So it is mainly the compressor who is squeezing the bag, and after giving 2 breaths, he is again moving to the patient's side and continuing with the chest compression. In COVID-19 patients, we plan for early definitive airway. So we try to intubate the patient at the earliest. Now coming to the airway management. Airway management during CPR is an aerosol generating procedure. Patient is going to cough, he is going to generate aerosols which will remain suspended in the environment. So how the intubation can be made safe? Intubation is done using a video laryngoscope guided endotracheal intubation. And we make use of a box. It's an aerosol containing box. It's an acrylic box similar to hood. You have seen oxygen hood being used for pediatric patients. It's similar to that, but it is larger in size, which can allow you to intubate the patient. It has 2 portholes through which your hands can gain access to the patient. Now, the airway management, here you can see the tracheal intubation should be done at the earliest and preferably should be done by an experienced anesthesiologist. And during this period, when you are going to make use of filter. This is, here you can appreciate, this is HME filter, or you can see we make use of a closed circuit. You can have a ventilator with 2 HMEF or viral filters you can make use of. This is again to protect the healthcare personnel from getting infection from the environment of the patient. Now the procedure of the intubation. The person has to wear PPE. You can see the anesthesiologist, he is a person who is completely donned, and the other 2 assistants are also there completely donned in PPE. So total there are 3 people required for resuscitation and 1 person stands outside. It's somewhere outside the room and provides injections and other life-saving equipment as and when required. Again, this recommendation is being made keeping in mind the high infectivity of the COVID-19 infection. The choice of drugs. Now, anesthetist or any experienced person who is very much experienced in doing intubation agent, that is rapid sequence intubation, RSI in short, where we make use of some paralyzing agent like are used so as to temporarily paralyze the patient, and then the intubation process is carried out. Now you have already seen in the picture, there are limited personnel, only 3 personnel are available. The most experienced person among the team members should take the responsibility for intubation, and there should be an acrylic aerosol containment box at cuff tube. Even in children, if you remember earlier, we had non-cuff tube for small babies, for children, but now following COVID, now we have started getting cuffed endotracheal tubes. For them also, we have to make use of HME filters. Confirm the correct placement of the tracheal tube by viewing the continuous waveform. Earlier, if you remember, we were doing bilateral auscultation, going to the patient's side, but now in COVID time, we avoid doing bilateral auscultation following the endotracheal tube placement. This is done by checking the capnography. That is, you look at the EtCO2 graph and know whether the tube is in place or not. If your value is more than 10 mm of mercury, the EtCO2, that is partial pressure of carbon dioxide at the endotracheal tube end is more than 10, you can be sure that the tube is in place and patient is being ventilated effectively. So chest compression, we continue at a rate of 120 compressions per minute without interruptions for 2 minutes. And the mechanical chest compressor, as I told you, if it is available in your unit, please do make use of it. Again, it is going to minimize your exposure to the patient. The pre-arrest ventilatory parameters should not be changed. Suppose patient was earlier ventilated and that time he developed cardiac arrest, you need not change the ventilatory parameters. FiO2 can be increased to 100%, and once the patient is successfully revived, then you can titrate the FiO2 according to the need of patient. Now, next is the closed suctioning. Another important guideline which says go for inline suctioning, also known as closed suctioning. It is a safe method of removing the secretions. Earlier, when we had patients prior to COVID-19, we were disconnecting the patient's tube from the ventilator, and then we used to insert the catheter. But here you can see this catheter remains in situ, in place throughout till the patient is intubated. Now, during suctioning, you just switch on the suction machine and adjust the pressure and withdraw the catheter. So same catheter is used for 20. Inline suctioning has some additional advantages in terms of, number one, infection entry is less. You are not going to introduce any infection to the patient. Number two, the cost of catheter gets reduced. You do not have to change the catheter again and again. And the most important advantage of this closed suctioning is you are not going to make patient lose his PEEP. Suppose you are disconnecting. In ordinary situation, when we were doing earlier, we were disconnecting the ET tube from the ventilator. That time there was loss of PEEP. That is PEEP, positive end expiratory pressure, which was causing a drop in the saturation. So that kind of problem can be taken care by this inline suctioning. So in COVID-19 patients, another important recommendation is for closed suctioning. Now next we move on to defibrillation. Defibrillation is a technique used in cardiac arrest patients who have shockable rhythm. So during cardiac arrest, we all know that there are two types of rhythms. We have a shockable rhythm, we have non-shockable rhythm. The shockable rhythms are mainly ventricular fibrillation and pulseless ventricular tachycardia, while non-shockable rhythm means where shock delivery is not required. They are pulseless electrical activity and asystole. So defibrillation is required when patient has shockable rhythm, mainly the ventricular fibrillation and pulseless ventricular tachycardia, and go for early defibrillation. Now coming to the how much energy to be used for delivering the shock. So initial dose is 120 joules with an escalating dose. You can go to 150 and the maximum dose is 200 joules. We do not go beyond that as per the standard protocol. For giving defibrillation to our patient, we have two ways to provide shock. Number one, by making use of disposable pads, and number two is by making use of pedals. So pedals are the one which are attached to the defibrillator. They come along with it. The company provides. While the disposable ones are detachable ones, they are disposable ones. They can be placed on the patient's side and you can deliver shock from a distance. So again, during COVID-19 pandemic, the use of disposable pads is recommended in place of pedals. So this is another important change you will observe. So here you can see the preemptive application means you can apply the pads in advance before you are going to deliver the shock. So any sick patient whom you anticipate is likely to develop cardiac arrest, you can have these disposable pads applied. So here you can see these are the disposable pads. We put it anterolaterally. One disposable pad is placed on the right side, just below the clavicle bone, and the other one is on the left side at the apex. While in children, we have anteroposterior placement. That is, the one pad is placed anteriorly while the other pad is placed posteriorly. So here you can see quickly the steps of defibrillation. We are going to turn on the defibrillator. Then you are going to peel off. You can either apply these pads in advance or you can apply them just prior to defibrillation. So you are going to peel off the sticky pads attached to the patient's skin, and while the pads are being placed, you are not going while the pads are being attached, don't stop CPR. So one person can continue doing CPR and the other person will attach the pad. So there is no need to interrupt your CPR. Then you are going to turn on the manual defibrillator. You are going to select the zools, and then you are going to discharge using this button. Earlier we were doing it using the paddles, but here you are away from the patient and from a distance you are delivering shock to the patient. Now whatever waste is generated during the entire CPR is to be considered as infectious and should be collected in double layered yellow polythene bag and to be handed over to the designated authorities responsible for biomedical waste management. Now, these are the drugs commonly used. We have injection adrenaline. This also you were using earlier. We have amiodarone for ventricular tachycardia, for pulseless VT, and for ventricular fibrillation. Lidocaine is the shockable rhythms along with defibrillation. Magnesium sulfate is used exclusively for those patients who are being given azithromycin and hydroxychloroquine. In India, this is a combination being given very frequently to our COVID-19 patients. So when these patients receive azithromycin along with hydroxychloroquine, they are at risk of developing multifocal ventricular tachycardia, which is called torsades pointis. So for that reason, these patients require injection magnesium sulfate, 1 to 2 gram, either intravenously or intraosseously, followed by a 10 ml of saline bolus over 5 to 20 minutes. Now coming to the routes for drug administration, we have intravenous route, we have intraosseous route. Earlier, prior to COVID-19, we were also talking about endotracheal route. But now, again, due to the risk of aerosol generation, we are not going for endotracheal administration of drugs. So the only two routes which are available to us are intravenous or intraosseous. Suppose patient is in shock, you are not able to see his veins are all collapsed. You can go for intraosseous administration, which is done in the long bone, preferably the proximal tibia can be used for the intraosseous fluid and drug administration. So just take it as an important point, intratracheal administration of drug is not at all recommended during COVID-19. So with regard to administration of drugs, there are few important points to remember. Depend on IV or intraosseous route. Flush the line extremity. So as a rule, you have to flush all the IV injections which you have given during the resuscitation and maintain closed loop communication while administering the drug. In case of return of spontaneous circulation, this is an important terminology which you should be familiar with. That is ROSC. ROSC is return of spontaneous circulation, which is going to be evident by patients showing purposeful movements. He will start moving his extremities. He may start mumbling. He may start speaking, and you may be able to feel his pulse, or you may find him breathing. So these are the signs of return of spontaneous circulation. So post resuscitation, our target is to maintain EtCO2 between 35 to 40 mm of mercury. This is normal. I'm sure if you have learnt about ABG analysis, you will know the normal partial pressure of carbon dioxide. We prefer to keep it less than 45, and the PCO2 should be more than 70. So, and any intubated patient who is being ventilated should have EtCO2 between 35 to 40 mm of mercury. Then after that, you are going to look for the possible cause of cardiac arrest. So this you can remember with the mnemonic called hit the target. Hit the target is nothing but 5H and 5Ts, which we have learned in our previous classes. So these conditions which are to be taken care of following resuscitation, you are going to pay attention to hypoxia, increased hydrogen ion concentration, tension pneumothorax, toxins, hypovolemia, electrolyte imbalance, tamponade cardiac, acute coronary syndrome, raised intracranial pressure, glucose abnormalities, could be hypo or hyperglycemia, embolism, mainly pulmonary thrombosis, and hypothermia. So these are the reversible causes. These are the treatable causes to which you have to pay attention to following the successful resuscitation. Now, how long to continue the resuscitation? In COVID patients, we do not go beyond 20 minutes. If despite 20 minutes of your effective cardiopulmonary resuscitation, you do not find any improvement, there is no return of spontaneous circulation, this patient can be declared dead. Those patients who have successfully revived, for them, we have to have a target saturation of 95%. However, FiO2 can be titrated according to the need of the patient. Monitor the patient hemodynamically and always aim at maintaining his arterial blood pressure, the mean arterial blood pressure, more than 65 mm of mercury, by which you can ensure optimal perfusion of vital organs like brain, heart, kidney. Now, post resuscitation care, if your patient remains comatose after resuscitation, avoid active rewarming. Temperature should not be allowed to be more than 36 degrees Celsius. This is called therapeutic hypothermia. The advantages of therapeutic hypothermia are this reduces the metabolic demand of our patients, and their possibility of survival gets improved. So do not aim for warming the patient. One should not try rewarming the patient following resuscitation. It is good if you are keeping the temperature around 36 to 36.5 degree Celsius. For any kind of coronary problem or neurological problem, you can seek specialist consultation. Now coming to the transportation, many times we have to shift our COVID patient from one facility to another facility within the hospital, or it could be between two hospitals. So what are the precautions we have to observe? For shifting our patients, there should be designated zones of transport, and they should be different from the normal passages. There should be sufficient supply of PPE. There should be a trained doctor, a nurse, and the support personnel while shifting patient from one facility to another facility. And make sure that you have adequate life-saving equipments, drugs, and transport monitors available, mainly the pulse oximeter available to you, the cardiac monitor available attached to the patient when you are shifting the patient from one facility to another facility. And during the transportation, you have to ensure safe safety of yourself and also of the bystanders. The healthcare professionals should be donned in properly PPE. The bystanders should not be allowed to cross the path, and post-transport decontamination is to be done. This is highly recommended. So CPR and post-cardiac care, arrest care are high-risk activities. One has to keep in mind these are high-risk activities right from the beginning. Ensuring scene safety, you have to don proper PPE. If you are not donned in proper PPE, please do not resuscitate the patient. Number 2, we told about checking the response. Maintain adequate distance, that is arm length distance. Number 3, activating the COVID code blue so that 2 designated persons come to you for your help. Too many people are not allowed at the site of resuscitation. And then there are only 3 people. One person is responsible for chest compression. Another one is for bag and mask ventilation or airway management and try to go for early intubation. And the third person is responsible for defibrillation and for giving IV drugs. The fourth person remains outside the facility. I have a video to show to you. So once this gets over, we have recorded it in our facility and I would like to share that video with you at the end of this presentation. It is about to be over. The rescuer must wear appropriate PPE and follow all the precautions rigorously. So with this, I stop here and I would like to share one video with you. This video we have prepared in our set facility for educational purpose. So I can run this video for you and you will learn how CPR is to be provided. It is a team activity. It is a teamwork. One person cannot provide CPR all alone. So let us watch this video. Is the video visible? Shall I start playing it? Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
In the earlier webinars, we learned about early recognition and activation of EMS, giving chest compressions,
Ma'am,
managing
please
airway,
increase the volume if possible.
resuscitation, and post-resuscitation care. It's maximum. In this webinar, we
Okay.
are going to learn about how to run Megacode in your unit. At the end of this webinar, you will be able to appreciate the principles of group dynamics and communication, effectively working in a team, and the need for having a periodic drill in your unit. Cardiac arrest in COVID-19 patient is most likely to occur in any emergency department or in a critical care unit or a high dependency unit. Managing cardiac arrest is a team approach. Small team of 3 to 4 people are required for managing the cardiac arrest in COVID-19 patient. Here we have some roles and responsibilities assigned to the team members. The airway manager takes the role of the team leader. Compressor and the drug administrator, they change their roles after every 5 cycles. And there is a runner who is positioned at a 5 feet distance or sometimes outside the room, who is responsible for providing equipment, supplies needed during resuscitation and for preparing the emergency life-saving IV drugs. Here you can see the members of resuscitation team. The team leader, also called the airway manager, stands at the head end of the patient, and you can see the chest compressor and the drug and defibrillator manager, they change their roles after every 5 cycles. While the runner is outside or distantly located, that is around 6 feet from the patient. Here we have a case scenario. Mr. Kumar comes to the emergency department with complaints of chest pain, shortness of breath, and excessive sweating. He is accompanied by his wife, who gives the history of Mr. Kumar having cough and fever for last 1 week. He was taking tablet hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin. He was made to lie down on a bed and offered some sips of water by his wife. He suddenly collapsed, and the same was witnessed by a healthcare provider. So let's see how Mr. Kumar was managed in the emergency department.
Hello? क्या नाम है? क्या हुआ आपको? It's not responding. Smita, can you just activate the code blue team and ask them to bring the defibrillator, the crash cart, and the airway equipments? 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005, 1006, 1007, 1008, 1009, 1010. He's not having pulse. He's not breathing. Smita, can you just start the resuscitation, please? Attach the defibrillator pad and look for the rhythm.
10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24,
A little faster.
26, 27, 28, 29, 30.
1001, 1002, 1003.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14.
So I think monitor is attached. Let's see the rhythm, please. Okay, this rhythm appears to be ventricular fibrillation. I think we need to give shock. Meanwhile, we start continuous chest compression ventilations with a charge to 120 joules and deliver one shock.
8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24.
Starting at 120, please clear the patient.
1001.
All clear, oxygen clear. Stop delivered.
Okay, so we'll continue CPR. So can you just load, secure an intravenous line, look for the samples and the blood samples and start IV
11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 27, 28, 29, 30.
1001, 1002, 1003.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5,
Good compression, very good, continue.
8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, 18, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 27, 28, 29, 30.
1001, 1002, 1003. 2 cycles completed.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, 18, 19, 20, 22, 23, 24, 25.
The IV line is inserted and the samples are taken.
Good. 1001, 1002, 1003. 3 cycles
1,
completed.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 14, 15, 16, 18, 19, 20, 21, 23, 24, 27, 28, 29, 30.
1001, 1002, 1003. 5 cycles over. Let's see for the rhythm again. The rhythm again shows to be the ventricular fibrillation in stitch over. Puram, can you just load 1 milligram of
1,
adrenaline
2,
and give
3,
it
4, 5,
intravenously followed by a
6,
bolus of
7,
20 normal
8,
saline.
9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17,
Very good.
18,
Good
19,
tap.
20,
Good speed.
21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30.
1001, 1002, 1003. 1 cycle
1,
over.
2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30.
Okay. 1001, 1002, 1003.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30.
1001, 1002, 1003. 5 cycles over. Let's stick to the rhythm again. So I think again we have ventricular fibrillation. Can you just escalate to 150 joules and give defibrillation to this patient of 150 joules? Meanwhile, can you continue chest compression in charging?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
Starting at 120, please clear the patient.
And here.
Clear, oxygen clear. Stop delivered.
You can start CPR. Now rhythm is being maintained, can you just load 300 milligram of amytron and give it slow intravenously?
18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 26, 27, 30.
1001, 1002, 1003. 2 cycles over.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 18, 19,
So whenever the reports are available, please let me
24,
know.
25, 26, 29, 30.
Section amytron 300 mg IV given,
1003. 3 cycles over.
10 mg mixed starch and the arm is
5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15.
Can you increase the depth, please? Good. Very nice.
21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30.
1001, 1002, 1003.
1, 2,
We have to look for the causes also. Hit the target.
7, 8,
I think investigation has been sent to wherever they are available. Just let me know. Look for the AB signature also. Accordingly, we try to manage it. So we'll pull out one by one. We hit the target first, and accordingly we'll manage. 1001, 1002, 1003. So I think 5 cycles are over. Let's look for the rhythm. It appears to be a flattening protocol. It again just follow the flattening protocol. The leads are okay. Increase the rhythm, increase the amplitude of it. Check that it is properly attached. So I think this is not a flat line. This appears to be a ventricular fibrillation. Fine, BF. Can you start the CPR again?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30.
1001, 1002, 1003.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30.
1001, 1002, 1003.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30.
1001, 1002, 1003.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30.
1001, 1002, 1003. 5 cycles over. Let's look for the rhythm again. It appears to be a fine BF. I think we can continue CPR. Madam, can you continue CPR? Smita, can you just confirm those investigations which we have sent back to for the reason for the cardiac arrest for
5,
this
6,
patient?
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30.
1001, 1002, 1003.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7,
The
8,
patient is in
10,
hypoglycemia is 1.3 and
15, 16,
Rest
17,
investigations are normal.
everything is
So okay, just give 1 gram of magnesium dilute to 10 ml and give it slow intravenously. 1001, 1002, 1003.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30.
1001, 1002, 1003.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23,
slowly
26, 27, 28, 29, 30.
1001, 1002, 1003.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 8, 9, 10, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17,
Okay.
20, 21, 22, 23, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30.
1001, 1002, 1003.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 16, 17, 19, 20, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30.
1001, 1002, 1003. 5 cycles are over. I think rhythm appears to be normal. Let's look for the pulses, whether they are available or not.
1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005. I can see the pulse.
Okay, pulse is there, but he is not breathing, so we'll continue ventilation for this patient. So we'll give 1 breath every 6 seconds. So I think probably the cause was hypomagnesemia. So I think that also correlates with the treatment therapy that he was receiving, probably the use of certain drug. So I think he is having good circulation. We'll just monitor the blood pressures and look for the patients, monitor the patients continuously, and we'll look for the ventilatory support to this patient.
So let's start with the IV fluid.
Yes, please. Yeah, the IV fluid is there. So just continue maintenance of around 100 ml per hour. And the Foley's catheterization needs to be done, and we'll continuously monitor the patients. Let's prepare for the airway management now. Okay, airway is secured. Now we'll start the CPR. We'll continue chest compression at the speed of 120 compressions per minute uninterrupted, and I'll give 1 breath every 6 seconds.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 28, 29, 30. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. 1,
2 minutes are over. Let's look for the rhythm again. Don't touch. Let's lift the rhythm. So it appears to be a normal sinus rhythm. I think the patient is not breathing. Let's look for the pulse now.
1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005. I can see the pulse.
Okay, pulse is there, but he's not having any chest movement, so he's not having any respiratory effort. So we'll continue ventilation. Can I get the mechanical ventilator? Patient needs to be on ventilator, and we'll look for the recovery profile of this patient and look for what other reasons are there for the respiratory. So let's put this patient on mechanical ventilation.
So after having watched the video, we have some important points to remember. Use of effective communication is important. Communication may be affected by the use of PPE, for which we need to plan a proper strategy. Team dynamics and role of rescuers must be ascertained by the periodic conduct of the drill. Debriefing sessions among the rescuers after the resuscitation attempt, emphasizing on scope to improve quality of CPR and protection of healthcare personnel should be also carried out. Here we have finally a message for the participants, providing comprehensive cardiopulmonary life support.
Hello, so it's over.
Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. So today we have discussed about the CPR diligence, and Dr. Poonam Joshi ma'am from AIIMS has discussed very vital points related to the CPR and diligence which is required while performing CPR for the COVID patients. I am really grateful to you, ma'am. You have discussed the entire topic in a very sensitive as well as comprehensive way. You have updated the CPR guidelines given by AHA, ERC, IRC, and those were the latest guidelines which we have learned just now. You have also discussed the safety guidelines which are required at the personal level and at the scene level, which is very important because this COVID is a very deadly disease and there are high chances that healthcare workers can also contract the disease while giving care, while giving CPR to the patients. You have specifically, ma'am, addressed the CPR steps and with skills which are required for caring for COVID patients when they are in need of CPR. And you have introduced the concept of mechanical chest compressor to our participants. And this is a new concept for the participants, and I hope everybody has learned very nicely. And you have also discussed about the aerosol containing box, rapid sequence intubation, and the closed suctioning, which is basically done to prevent cross infection while doing CPR for COVID patients. And you discussed in defibrillation, and specifically you focused upon the shockable and non-shockable rhythms. And in the drugs portion, the specific approach, ROSC, that is the return of spontaneous circulation, was really emphasized by you, ma'am. And even you never forgot to discuss the post-resuscitation care, which is very important, so that the patient does not need CPR again. Words are not enough to thank you, ma'am, for your wonderful session. And even you shared a good video. Though we have learned CPR many times, but the CPR related to COVID patients is something important topic, and the diligence required for CPR is most supreme thing, which you have really discussed. And we are so grateful to you for sparing your time, and you have shared your experience working at AIIMS New Delhi. And we are really, very grateful that sitting at our stations, at our workplaces, and at homes, we have really got first-hand experience of what the people are doing at All India Institute of Medical Sciences. I'm really grateful to you, ma'am, and I am really grateful to all the participants who have sustained their presence during the entire webinar. Many participants, they have joined with us through the YouTube. I'm really grateful to all the participants. And now I open the session for the questioning. Participants, if they have questions, please feel free to ask from Poonam ma'am. Any questions? And I think, ma'am, one of the person who was doing CPR was you only.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So it's a great moment of proud for me that I am your student, and we are really learning, still
Yeah,
learning from you, ma'am. We have NPCC students also who have joined us, and MSc, BSc students apart from the faculty and the other delegates from outside. Any questions? Anyone who has confronted any problem during doing CPR for COVID patients or otherwise, they should feel free to ask questions from ma'am. Participants can unmute themselves and can ask question directly. So I think, ma'am, we don't have the questions right now.
Okay.
So now I would request Ms. Kalpana Mohan, Assistant Professor in the Department of Community Health Nursing, Prem Institute of Medical Sciences, to give a formal vote of thanks. Over to Kalpana, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am. A very good afternoon to all the respected guests present over here. First of all, I would like to thank you, our respected Director Principal, Facilitator Professor Inderpreet Kaur ma'am, who gave me an opportunity to speak on this auspicious occasion, and it's a matter of honor for me. Thanksgiving is the greatest form of gratitude, and we all know that gratitude makes the sense of our past, bring peace for today, and creates a vision for tomorrow. On the behalf of entire Prem Institute of Medical Science, I would like to thank our Honorable Chairman, Chief Patron, Dr. Pankaj Mutneja ji, and the Vice Chairman, Dr. Rachna Mutneja ji, for their kind presence on their occasion and for delivering such an inspiring and motivating speech. And it's always been our pleasure to have you with us. Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am. I thank our special guest, Dr. Poonam Joshi, ma'am, in the nursing, FCR MEBM, FACEN, India, Associate Professor, College of Nursing, AIMS, New Delhi, who despite her busy schedule has found time to grace the occasion and delivering such an inspiring and knowledgeable content regarding the CPR diligence, which enhance our professional skills. Thank you, ma'am. I thank all the distinguished faculty and the student of PIMS present here and accepting our invitation. And I thank the member of the IT department, Mr. Sun, for the connectivity and to avoid any external interruption. I would like to thank Mr. N. Pandey, member of the mass media, for evincing interest in the covering the event and all good heart who work behind the screen. All the members, health workers are the greatest hero in this story. Their intelligence, bravery, and compassion are the saving grace of this nation during this dark episode. Thank you to all for serving the humanity. You all are sacrificing so much to save the life and to maintain the normalcy. That is why you all are the frontline heroes of this generation. Your courage, dedication, and compassion, selflessness, skills, and professional will definitely allow us to get through this crisis, and we all are the in debt to you. I would also like to thank Dr. Ratna Prabhas for their motivating speech and to enhance our professional skills also. Thank you, ma'am. I appreciate your hard work and sacrifice to be at work when so many others are at home, to run towards the danger instead of running away and to continue to put the needs of others before your own needs. Thank you all for being our nation is guiding light in the face of this adversity. We all appreciate from the bottom of our heart that you are risking your health to make our community safe. Finally, I leave you with the inspiring quote by Martin Luther King. An individual has not started living until he rises above the confines of his individualistic concern to the broader concern of all the humanity. Once again, I thank you all for your attention. God will bless you all for caring all of us. Thank you. Thank you once again. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you all. Special thanks for the honorable speaker for the day, Dr. Poonam Joshi, and Dr. Ratna Prakash, who joined us, and really she is a big figure in the field of nursing. She's a blessing. In fact, I would say that she's a blessing to our nursing profession. I thank you, ma'am, for your valuable time and efforts to make this webinar a success. On behalf of the management, staff, and students, I would like Dr. Ratna Prakash to say a few words for the closing ceremony of the webinar. Over to Ratna, ma'am.
Hello.
Hello,
it was so nice of you to send your link and inform me. Sorry, I joined very late because of network problem. But it's a very great effort during this lockdown period. You are not wasting time. You are trying to keep up updated knowledge and skill for the students. Great, very great effort. Thank you and best wishes.
Thank you. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your blessings for our students and the staff. And at the end, I would like to thank Almighty for making this webinar a success. I'm really thankful to all my faculty members at AIIMS New Delhi who have given me the potential to do all these things. And I'm really thankful to the Almighty to give me power to keep my efforts on for my students and for my nursing professional colleagues. Thank you very much. Thank you all. God bless you. I wish a very happy Eid to all of you. With all these words, I am really ending this webinar. So you are requested to leave the meeting. Thank you. Thank you.